There is a quiet kind of man the world doesn't talk about. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't chase affection. He doesn't raise his voice to prove his point. And yet, when he enters a room, the atmosphere shifts. People sit up straighter. Women notice. Men adjust. Not because he demands anything, but because his presence carries something most have lost. Self-respect. You won't see him in viral videos crying over betrayal. You won't hear him ranting online for sympathy. He has no interest in proving himself to people who never earned the right to question him. This kind of man doesn't shout to be heard. His silence speaks louder than most men's entire personalities. His eyes hold boundaries. His posture commands presence. And his life? It's a direct reflection of the standard he refuses to lower. For anyone. This man doesn't just have boundaries. He is the boundary. And here's the truth that most men never learn until it's too late. Respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you become. Moment by moment, decision by decision, especially when no one's watching. Because every time you tolerate what insults your soul, every time you let something slide just to keep the peace, every time you stay quiet when your dignity is being shaved thin by sarcasm or silence, you don't just lose her respect, you lose your edge. And without that edge, you become what most women never admit they fear. A man who is easy to control, easy to ignore, easy to forget. But that ends now, because a man without boundaries is like a kingdom without walls. Every petty attack, every toxic influence, every form of emotional chaos finds a way in. And eventually, he forgets what peace even feels like. But not you, not anymore. This isn't about punishing anyone. This isn't about becoming cold or closed off. This is about commanding respect by mastering the one thing you've always had, but never protected enough. Yourself. Let me show you the 5 most powerful boundaries that shift how a woman sees you. Not because you try to control her, but because you finally control yourself so deeply, so calmly, so clearly, that she has no choice but to recalibrate how she engages with you. And not just her, the world. Because when you build these boundaries, everything changes. Let's begin. Boundary 1, never explain your worth. Expanded. Most men are taught that if they just say the right thing, just explain their side a little better. If they're patient enough, vulnerable enough, soft enough, she'll finally see them for who they truly are. She'll finally appreciate everything they've done. She'll finally respect them. But here's the quiet truth that separates the magnetic from the forgettable. The moment you explain your worth, you signal that you doubt it. Think about that. Every time you justify yourself, every time you over-explain your intentions, every time you try to convince her that you're good enough, that you've been loyal, present, consistent, you are broadcasting something far more dangerous than insecurity. You are whispering to her subconscious, I believe your approval is more important than my self-trust. And once she senses that, you're no longer the man she respects. You become the man she manages. Because women don't follow explanations. They follow energy. They follow certainty. They follow the man who doesn't shrink when questioned, who doesn't bend just to be understood, who doesn't adjust his direction just to avoid friction. When she challenges your path, you don't pause to justify it. You continue walking it. When she doubts your values, you don't soften them. You stand taller in them. When you say no, you don't say it with a paragraph. You say it with finality, because your standards were never up for negotiation. A man who explains too much becomes less felt, less trusted, less respected. Because women aren't drawn to logic, they're drawn to alignment. A man whose words match his walk. A man who radiates certainty so deeply that even when she disagrees with him, she still admires him. And here's the part they won't say out loud. When you stop explaining yourself, she leans in. Not because you manipulated her, but because mystery commands gravity. Because conviction, real conviction, doesn't explain itself. You want to become unforgettable? Then become the man who lets his actions speak, who lets his results speak, who lets his values echo louder than any explanation could. The most powerful men in history were never understood, but they were always felt. So the next time you feel the urge to defend your decisions, stop, look her in the eyes, say less. Because in a world of noise, a man of few words but unshakable presence is the man no one dares to disrespect. Boundary 2. Never respond to disrespect. Twice disrespect doesn't always walk in the front door. Sometimes it comes dressed as a joke. Sometimes it hides inside silence. Sometimes it wears a smile while cutting you with sarcasm. And most men, they laugh it off. They stay quiet. They pretend not to notice because they don't want to overreact. But here's the bitter truth. The first time you let disrespect slide, it's her test. But the second time you let it slide, it becomes your pattern. You don't get tested because she's evil. You get tested because nature wired her to feel out your strength. She wants to know, can I lean into him emotionally? Or will he collapse if I push too far? And when you let that slide the first time, she watches. But when you let it slide the second time, she adjusts. Not in your favor, but in her level of respect for you. Disrespect doesn't always look like yelling. It's her rolling her eyes when you speak. It's her mocking your goals around her friends. It's her texting other men and calling you insecure for bringing it up. It's her going silent for hours and calling it space. It's her threatening to leave over little things just to see if you'll beg. And when you stay, when you justify it, ignore it, or apologize to fix what you didn't break, you don't look strong, you look dependent. And what woman respects a man who tolerates being chipped away? Piece by piece, the Stoic man corrects disrespect once, clearly, calmly, without emotion. Don't speak to me that way again. This doesn't align with how I live. If it happens again, I'm done. No yelling, no explanations, no threats, just a warning, followed by action. And when she crosses the line again, you don't negotiate, you don't argue, you don't stay to prove your point. You walk away with silence, with dignity, with peace. Because when you do this, two things happen. She either levels up and begins to respect the man you are, or she exits, removing herself before she's forced to evolve. Either way, you win. Because what you're protecting isn't the relationship, it's your masculine frame. And once that's gone, it's almost impossible to get it back. This isn't about playing games or being controlling. It's about recognizing that the man who ignores disrespect isn't choosing peace. He's choosing decay. You don't just teach her how to treat you. You teach her what you're willing to lose yourself for. And the moment you make peace with the idea of losing her is the moment you become the kind of man she can't afford to lose. So make it a law. Disrespect is addressed once. If it repeats, so do your steps. Out the door. Not in anger, not with ego, but with the calm assurance of a man who values his soul more than her company. Boundary 3. Protect your time like your life depends on it, because it does. A man's time isn't just minutes ticking away on a clock. It's his life force, his legacy, his chance to build something no one else can replicate. But most men, they give it away like it's unlimited. They entertain women who drain them. They reply to texts that mean nothing. They sit in conversations that go nowhere, scroll for hours hoping to feel alive, and say yes to everything except their own purpose. But here's the truth. Every minute you waste on what doesn't grow you kills a version of the man you were meant to become. And she knows it. Women are not attracted to men who are simply available. They are drawn to men whose time feels expensive. Because when your time is sacred, your presence becomes rare. And when your presence becomes rare, your value rises without you saying a single word. When she knows she can text you at 1 a.m. and you'll reply instantly, she loses curiosity. When she knows you'll clear your calendar the moment she's free, she loses urgency. When she knows she's always the center of your attention, she loses respect. Because the man who makes her the center of his world has no world of his own. But the man who protects his time, who is focused, disciplined, and unavailable to nonsense, he becomes a force she studies, a force she tries to align with, a force she fears losing. So here's the standard. If she cancels last minute, don't chase. If she wants to just chill with no plan, decline. If she shows up with chaos, energy-draining conversations, or emotional tests, exit the moment it costs your focus. You were not put here to be her emotional sponge. You were not created to be on call for drama. You were built to build. Every project you abandon to respond to a text. Every morning you skip just to impress someone who doesn't value structure. Every hour you give away for free. You're silently telling the world that your mission is secondary, and a man without a mission is just a distraction with muscles. Women don't respect men who are always available. They respect men who have to schedule time. Because their lives are too purpose-driven to be pulled around by momentary emotion. You want to increase your value instantly? Start protecting your time like it's your final currency. Because one day, it will be. And when that time runs out, let it be said that you used it like a king, not like a boy afraid to say no. Boundary 4. Let her feel the silence. Most men lose their power in moments of uncertainty. A slight shift in her tone, a delayed response to a message, a random coldness that wasn't there the day before, and suddenly, their entire frame collapses. They overthink, they text, they double text, they call, they ask, is something wrong? Not out of leadership, but out of fear, because silence makes most men spiral. But here's what you must understand. Silence is not a void, it's a weapon. And in the hands of a grounded man, it becomes power. When she pulls away, don't chase, don't panic, don't start over-explaining or trying to fix something she hasn't even named. Let her feel the weight of her own actions. Let her feel the stillness. Because in that silence, she will learn something vital. You are not fueled by her attention. You are not dependent on her emotional weather. You do not move unless your principles do. Most men respond too fast, too much, too soon. They react to every micro shift in her energy. They fear losing connection, so they overcorrect. They confuse presence with availability, and they give up their power trying to reassure her. But what she really respects is the man who can sit in silence without flinching, the man who doesn't need to defend himself when she withdraws, the man who waits, not because he's playing a game, but because he values his peace more than her drama. That kind of silence, it forces her to look inward, to reflect, to consider her own behavior. And when she realizes you won't chase, that you won't break your frame to appease her, that her coldness doesn't control your direction, she recalibrates. Not because you told her to, but because she realizes something rare. You're the one man who didn't flinch. Let her feel the silence. Let her hear the echo of her own distance. Let her remember that you are not another man desperate to keep her close at the cost of your dignity. Silence is presence. It's awareness. It's control. A woman may love a man who speaks sweet words, but she respects the man whose silence has consequences. You are not responsible for filling every gap she creates. You are not here to chase back what pulled away. You are here to hold your frame so unshakably that her respect deepens the longer you say nothing. Let the silence work, because if she values you, she'll feel it. And if she doesn't, then your silence just saved you from a woman who was never truly listening anyway. Boundary 5. Walk away and mean it. This is the boundary that separates the man who is respected from the man who is tolerated, because most men, they talk about standards, they talk about boundaries, they talk about self-worth. But when it's time to walk away, they freeze, they fold, they stay. And every time they stay in something that insults their values, that disrespects their energy, that drains their soul, they don't just lose her respect, they lose something far more dangerous, themselves. Because when a woman knows you won't leave, no matter what, she stops trying to keep you. She starts pushing the line, talking down to you, withholding affection, testing your silence, just to confirm what she already suspects. He's not strong. He's scared. He doesn't love me. He's addicted to needing me. And once she confirms that, it's over, long before the relationship ends. But the man who is willing to walk away, not out of ego, not to manipulate, but from deep, non-negotiable alignment with his values, that man becomes magnetic, not because he threatens to leave, but because she senses that if her presence ever becomes a threat to his peace, he'll choose himself, He'll choose solitude over self-sacrifice. He'll choose clarity over chaos. He'll choose his mission over her mood swings. And that kind of man, that's the man she respects. That's the man she watches her words around. That's the man she adjusts for. Because she knows, if I cross that line, I lose something I can never replace. Let this sink in. A man who stays in a job that drains him. A man who stays in a friendship that disrespects him. A man who stays in a relationship that emasculates him isn't choosing love. He's choosing fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of judgment. Fear of change. And fear, no matter how noble it sounds, is not masculine. What is detachment, decisiveness, dignity? The ability to walk away, not with bitterness, but with calm, with peace, with the full understanding that your identity is not up for sale. Because when a man finally draws that final line and walks, that's when his real life begins. That's when his circle changes. That's when his mind clears. That's when his future opens up like a path that was always there, just waiting for him to let go of what was never aligned. You must become the kind of man who can walk away from anyone and anything that makes you forget who you are. And once you become that man, you'll never have to threaten, chase, or convince again. Your energy will speak. Your presence will filter. Your silence will protect. And your walk-away power will become the force that elevates every room you enter. So if you've made it this far, and you feel that fire rising in your chest, that clarity returning to your mind, that deep inner knowing that you've been tolerating too much for too long, then it's time. Time to draw the line. Time to reclaim your edge. Time to stop asking for respect and start designing it. Comment below, I choose strength. Say it, live it. Because the second you choose your peace over her presence, your mission over her moods, your dignity over your desire, that's the second the boy dies and the man finally rises.